Hello, welcome to the Dailies on Network Television International. Still in the spirit of the new year, we'll be looking at a number of stories that are making it on the papers this morning. I am Sarah Elisha Dasham. I'll be doing the program with Rachel Tanzi. Good morning, Rachel. All right, we shall be going, fast into the paper, and we'll be starting with the Punch newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, fake degrees, 10,900 Nigerians in Benin, Togo varsities lament. Banks borrow over 19 trillion naira from CBN. This is a report. You can find details on page 21. Customs generate 3 trillion naira, 5 trillion naira in 2024. The big story on the paper, Forex scandal. AFCC combs Dangote headquarters for documents and probes 51 firms. How AFCC ordered 52 firms to submit forex allocation forms from 2014 to 2023. You can find all the details on page 2. Traders protest asks Lagos government to approve market. You can find details on page 21. Still on the paper, foreign investment in manufacturing sectors dropped by 54%. Report from the Bureau of Statistics. Plateau attack survivors battle hunger in IDP camp. Federal government releases 108 billion naira for road repairs. Details can be found inside the paper, and that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
Well, I believe with all of this attack, I think it's high time the government does something. I mean, we saw where the vice president was present. He came into the country. We had where other governors of the central, North Central also met. So I believe that they should look into making sure that the people in the IDP camps are actually provided with all that they need, because this attack, I mean, for like 4 days starting from Christmas Eve down to even after the Christmas, we had a number of attacks in various local government areas. So I believe that this should be a wake-up call for our government to not just put their attention on one area, but rather to also focus and see that, those who are in the IDP camps actually need help. So we should look into making sure that the money and all of the allocations that have been given in regards to that, the government should do well by taking care of these people over there, because one thing eventually will kill a man, but I believe that we shouldn't add hunger to the list. If we have all that is needed, then we should make sure that these people actually are being well taken care of while in the IDP camps.
Sally, our emergency response is always very poor. We see that in everything from security, even down to the welfare of Nigerians. If 2-3 days after this attack, we have these displaced people battling with hunger, is understood. But we're talking about a week later, and then nothing emergency has been done to them, like in quick response. And then I think that shows a lot of laxity, because in the end, I believe that this is one of the situations where both the federal government steps in. It is a responsibility of everybody to step in. Who are the senators that these local government areas fall under their constituency? What are they doing about it? What is the state government doing about it? What is the ministry in charge of the welfare and responding to things like this in the country are doing about it? I believe if everybody should wake up and be like on their toes, we would have started seeing some kind of care coming to these people, because it's temporary until some safety and peace is restored to their community, and then they can have their normal life back. So I just hope that the people, the authority in position to make sure that hunger, as you said, Sele, doesn't kill them, also wake up and do the needful. And it should be fast, because we are too slow, Sele, when it comes to tackling certain issues quickly. And I just hope that this administration will show us that they are not going to be slow concerning the needs of Nigerians.
Of course, Rachel. Let's take a look at the next paper, which is New Telegraph newspaper. And the story I will be starting is with the CBN. Fresh loan boosts external reserve by $231 million to $33.02 billion. You can start reading the story on the front page and continue inside the paper. And coming from Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, Nigeria's manufacturing sector will face crisis in the first half of 2024, looking at the hike in prices of various things. And here we see manufacturers are actually complaining about that. You can do well to read up more of that story on page 8. And also here, Wiki saying we won't abandon projects started with taxpayers' money. You can read more of that inside the paper. And coming from Plateau State, the governor presently said, my election notified without basic, governor cries out to the Supreme Court. Because hopefully by Monday he should know his fate, whether he will still be the governor or he will be sacked totally. And here, Army to probe recruitment fraud in Lagos, sanctioned corporates. You can find more of that on the issue of indigenship. You can find that on page 2, where we saw videos have been flying around about certain people who are actually from one state, Richard, and were claiming to be indigents of Lagos State. I think I saw about 3 or 4 of them who were actually indigents of Kaduna State, but the certificate they were holding during the recruitment was actually that of Lagos State. And they were being asked questions, how did they come about that? And they were mentioning a number of Colonel D's, General D's, and all of that. And that is to say that we are not being transparent, because we know that every zone in Nigeria is supposed to be ably represented. So when we see a number of people from a particular state taking the slot that is supposed to go to another state, we know that that is very, very not fair. And we really have to applaud the army for coming up. I mean, if not because we're very vigilant and being very, very careful. I mean, I listened to the woman while she was trying to speak Yoruba to some of these men there, and then they were unable to respond. That just showed that you are not an indigene of Lagos State. So I think it's high time we are more transparent. This shows us laxity in a number of things. So imagine if we are seeing that in the army, how about the police, how about the custom, how about even other places where recruitment is going on, and then we're seeing that certain people are being denied the privilege. No wonder we're seeing that a number of states are not being represented properly in the army or the police or whatever recruitment is going on. So we have to applaud the army, and we hope that this will be an eye-opener during any recruitment. Let us have thorough investigation being done before they actually be recruited or go through this exercise eventually. Still on New Telegraph newspaper, we have IGR deduction. Tertiary institutions don't generate revenue. ASUB tells the federal government. You can find that story on page 3. Excuse me. And the big story here, we have EFCC probes 52 firms over forex transaction with CBN. Ondo local government chairman fight back, challenge suspension order. Detail found on page 29. Tinubu appoints 6 EDs for MPA, and then Namasa, you can find that on page 7. And National Hospital, we don't refer Zach Orji to, okay, I take that story, we didn't refer Zach Orji to private facility, says the actor left against medical advice, because there were pictures about this veteran Nollywood actor who have been struggling with his health. And here we're seeing the National Hospital saying that they didn't actually refer him to any private facility. Rather, he left against medical advice. So you can read more of that story on page 29. And the issue of certificate palaver, federal government to extend ban to Ghana, Kenya, Uganda, and Niger. Federal government to extend ban to Kenya, Uganda, and Niger. And then we are having the National Association of Nigerian Students says over 15,000 Nigerian students affected by the federal government's ban. You can find that on page 3 and 5. And I remember you and I going through that story yesterday, Rachel, during the afternoon program. So we believe that, I mean, even though the federal government is trying to probe that, but I think the number of people will be affected. So we hope that there will be a better way so that people who actually have this legitimate certificate will not get affected by this sanction eventually. Still a New Telegraph newspaper, let's review immediate remote causes of crisis in Plateau State, coming from northern governors, as Niger governor says farmers returning to the farms. Well, we hope as they are returning to the farms, they will be guaranteed security going back to the farm, to their farms presently. And then we have a study that says poor sleep in 30 seconds, 40 seconds tied to future memory problems. Okay, poor sleep in 30s and 40s tied to future memory problem. This is a study. So if you are between the ages of 30 and 40, you should develop a very good sleeping habit, or else you would develop memory problems. So you can find that study on page 7. We have a picture story on the front page of the paper as well. Do well to grab the paper in more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Daily Sun newspaper, EFCC raids Dangote, BUA and others says exercise continues. This is still on the forest scandal. You can find details on page 25. The big story on the paper, suspect education certificate. Federal government may extend clampdown to Kenyan, Ugandan universities. Don's experts ask government to beam searchlight on local institutions. You can find details on page 6. Bayelsa governor sues for peace as Fubara visits. Rivers crisis, T.HE withdraws suit challenging Umaule and others. You can find details on page 26. Nigeria's financial assets dipped by $817 million. This is a report on the FDIs. You can find details on page 2. Why Supreme Court should validate my election, a statement coming from Mutfwang, say it was nullified without basis. Police photographer died in Sokoto deputy governor's convoy road crash. Iwefuru Mahi Anyim Onu others back leadership award in Ebonyi State. You can find details on page 27. Maritime workers threatened to ground ports January 9. You can find details on page 2. Still on Daily Sun newspaper, on Plateau killings, Gombe governor advises against reprisals. We will not neglect border communities segment from lawmakers. And at the downside of the paper, Wike receives 50 billion naira for capital projects in FCT. More details can be found on page 28. We have a picture story where we can see the former Bayelsa governor Dixon and the current governor of Rivers State, Fubara, and also Doi Diri during visit to Diri's country home in Sampo, Kolokumax or Pokuma local government area. And that's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
On the Vanguard newspaper, we have EFCC ex-minister Farouk cited illness for shunning our invitation. This is coming from the EFCC regarding, you will remember or recall the fact that the EFCC actually wanted to question her 2 days back, and here she's saying that she was ill and that was why she shunned the invitation. You can read more detail of that story on page 8. South African Rupert replaces Dangote as Africa's richest person. You can find that story on page 9. And still on the issue of Plateau State, appeal called unfair to me, Governor Mutfwang tells Supreme Court. And we have on the viral video uproar over imposters exposing army recruitment exercise. And the writer following that big story here says the Middle Belt Forum Pandef Afenifere kicks profile solution. It's a wider agenda to emasculate the North. This is coming from the Northern Elders Forum. And then recruitment exercise Oshodi local government boards must be probed. And then we also have Oshodi local government chairman Oloyede orders thorough investigation. And then Lagos will issue prosecution of suspect, coming from Omoto Shaw vows. Says corporate will be prosecuted. And then how we arrested fraudulent candidates, coming from the army. You can find more detail of that story on page 5. Forex pressure worsen as manufactured goods import rise to 39% to 3.96 trillion naira. Kanu demolition victims lament loss of 30 persons, 260 billion naira properties. And on mobilization, how undercover reporter breached our system to enroll twice. You can find that story on page 9 coming from the NYSC. And still talking about 2023 AFCON Super Eagles 23 orders just sold for the 8.4 billion naira top prize. You can find more detail for our sport lovers on page 30. And that's all on Vanguard newspaper.
On Leadership Friday edition, Governor Mutfwang asks Supreme Court to void sack. Abuja Kaduna Road to be completed this year, coming from Mahi. You can find details on page 10. Police arrest 7 suspects over Plateau killings. Details on page 7. The big story on the paper, after December deadline, Port Harcourt Warri Refinery still not ready. The writer under the story, Presidency embarrassed Lokpobiri Kyari under fire. Mechanical commissioning mere face saving. Petroleum Ministry mom. You can find details on page 4. AFCC shy unreported raid of Dangote Lagos. Office details can be found on page 6. Tinubu Buhari to headline Adesina's book launch. Details can be found on page 7, and that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. We have FMC plans price crash for IVF births. You can find detail of that story on page 4. NUC lists 58 varsity awarding illegal degrees, so you can do well to read if your university or the university you actually attended is part of those 58 varsities that have been awarded with illegal degrees. Tinubu appoints 6 EDs for MPA and Namasar. And also we are having other story here that say federal government extends the Unitide Fair rebate till Sunday, which is the 7th of January. Uphold my mandate, Plateau Governor or Supreme Court. Appeal Court judgment on fair Apex Court hearing for Tuesday. You can find that on page 4. CBN acts tangles on COVID-19 loan defaulters. More detail found on page 4. 37 billion naira probe. Ex-minister gets EFCC 72-hour ultimatum. Anti-Craft Agency reject 3 weeks extension request by Sadia Umar Farouk. You can find more detail of that story in the paper. And Southwest Amote coup commanders and members work for Akere Dodo. We will remember that he was the one who actually brought the initiative for that. And here they again going through a walk to actually show their own condolence to him as he has passed away. More stories on the paper here. We have police begin recruitment screening on Monday. Custom to meet 5.1 trillion naira revenue target. You can find that story on page 7. And that's all on the Nation newspaper.
On Nigerian Tribune, T.HE withdraws suit against 25 Rivers Assembly members. Appeal Court judgment unfair to me, Plateau Governor tells the Supreme Court. And on Plateau killings, police arrest 8 suspects. Nollywood actor Olofa Ina dies at 73. Adeleke harmonizes levies taxes for ease of doing business. The big story, ARCC storms Dangote headquarters, investigation part of Emefiele's case. Details can be found on page 2. Troop kills 10 terrorists, rescue abducted victims in Katsina and Zamfara state. ASP on the run as police arrest and dismiss inspector for alleged robbery in Lagos. NPA Nimasa get new executive directors. Details can be found on page 6. 2 arrested for allegedly slitting throat of neighbor in Kwara State. What a sad one. You can find details on page 27. Still on Nigerian Tribune. Ondo PDP appoints acting chairman, says Adams suspension remains. Suspended Ondo local government LCDA chairman go to appeal court to challenge high court order. Amateku holds candlelight walk for Akeredullo. We can see picture story showing the walk. You can find details on page 12, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On the Voice of Liberty on Plateau killing, reprisal attack will only worsen crisis, coming from the northern governor's warning. You can find more detail of that in the paper, and we hope to see more proactive measures, not just in Plateau State, Kaduna, and other parts of the country where we are seeing pockets of killing and attack going on. And coming from Zamfara State as well, we have terrorists attack Emirate community for failing to pay 20 million naira levy and kill 10. And I wonder what the government of Zamfara is doing, and the federal government as well, because this is becoming unbecoming, Rachel. I mean, Zamfara State is becoming a soft spot. I remember last year or so we saw where they were supposed to pay about over 100 million naira, and then they had to leave and they kidnap a number of people as well. They said for every community, this is what you are supposed to actually pay. And you wonder, I mean, when I'm paying tax to the government, I still pay levies to terrorists just so I can protect my life, protect my property, and everything as well. So we are just hoping, I mean, we've said this a number of times here, Richard, is the fact that these bandits or these terrorists are not beyond the government. Let us see a
course not.
synergy between the army, the police, the everybody that is supposed to be working should put their hands together. Let us see that we be able to tackle this. If it means combing all the forest areas where they live, we should do that, except if we're saying that these people are beyond us, which I believe they are not. We have to cut down their supply. How do they get all of these arms that they are having? Who are
Yes,
the
Sally.
suppliers of this arm? How do they get food? How do they get water? How do they get power and all of these things? These are the things that we are supposed to cut them down. Because if the
Yeah.
government is able to do that, Rachel, I mean, they cannot work without food.
They
Neither
can't.
can they work without their machineries and all of that. There was a time a story was being told about how they even have to go to some of the IDP camps to charge their phones. And questions to be, if they are able to make it to the IDP camps to charge their
How
phones,
did they go out?
how? Question, Rachel. So I just hope that these are questions that Nigerians keep asking, and they don't just want a cheap answer coming from the government. We need sensible answers that will actually be able to answer the questions that are running through our mind. We cannot vote leaders into power that cannot protect our life, that cannot protect our property. We are more like the security for ourselves. You provide everything for yourself. So what is the work of the government at a time like this? It's actually heartbreaking, because if you will recall all the lives that have been lost, you can't help but say there was something the government would have been able to do. There's something they will have done, and then we'll be able to prevent this thing from reoccurring. So beyond our northern governors, I mean, coming out to see that a reprisal should not occur, what are they doing? It's not about sitting back in your
Yeah.
own house, having all the security agencies to protect you. How about the people who elected you into power? So we just hope that the government will take this challenge and do all that is expected. Protect people, protect properties, because that is your number one mandate to the people eventually.
Of course, Stella, we know how terrorists work. It's all about having a territory. Without the territory, terrorists don't exist. And it's like they conquer one place after the other. We just know how these things happen. And then it's all about the security agencies, the army, and everybody in charge taking back this community. Now, whether we like it or not, it means that this community is now under these terrorists, is under the governorship, the leadership
course.
of this terrorist group. And then they come just as the government is asking, because we have a government we're under, and when they say this is the tax you're supposed to pay, this is the levy you're supposed to pay, you must pay. It's the same thing now. We are saying that in these communities in Zamfara state, it's not being headed by the government of Zamfara state, but rather by these terrorists. And then they are making outrageous demands from the people in this community of such amount of money. And we there's no way I can't sit down here as a Nigerian and believe that these people are above the government or the army of this country. I'll keep saying it, that somebody is sleeping on their job and the needful is not being done. What could have been done to prevent this from happening wasn't done. And now what should be done to make this stop is not being done. And is when you just see that that is what is happening in this country. And I just hope that the people who are to do this job, Sele, wake up and do the job. If not, we will keep seeing this, and we are going to the level that is becoming normal. We are going to the level like the recent attacks in the Plateau State. It's just life goes on for a lot of people. Gone are the days where there's so much mourning. Now it feels normal. We're getting to that point of normalcy to the attacks and all of that. And then it's even taking away humanity from us. We as individuals,
Very
we're
true.
going to the point where, oh, it's just numbers, oh, it's 10, oh, it's 50, oh, it's 200. And then we leave it at that point. Then some part of us is beginning to die if we are going to look at it inwardly at that point. And then I believe that is the same for the government. The humanity part of them is starting to die if they are allowing these things to thrive. We need to wake up and work. Zamfara government cannot say that terrorists are above them. Neither with the army division in Zamfara state that say they will say these terrorists are above them. But then this keeps showing the gaps, such as the sabotage, such as the corruption, such as what needs to be done that is not being done in our system. And it is just a tough one to chew every day, because we saw all of this playing in throughout 2023, and it's like we are walking into 2024, Sele, and we are having the same things on our paper. And then you wonder, are we really growing? Are we getting better in this country? But I just hope that both the state and the federal government of Nigeria do something. If you're declaring state of emergency on security, then it's all hands on deck. There's no sleep for anybody until the citizens of this country are completely safe.
Because sometimes, Rachel, you can't help but imagine or feel that it seems as if when the our security agents are trying to record success in this area, and then somehow another confusion rise up from another place. There was a time where it looks more like it was a religious crisis, and then somehow it now looks as if it's a political crisis. And then right now you can't help but imagine what really is the problem. What really do these people want? What is it that we have? People have asked if then it was Boko Haram and you said that it's forbidden to read the books or to use any gadget, but then most of the things you use are things that were being produced out of the education that you are
guns
against.
you're holding is education.
Of course, Rachel. So right now we just have to ask question: what really is the problem? Why do innocent people have to pay the price for somebody's sake? You can, I don't know if you've heard this, but a number of people have said, if you're having a problem with any of these people, why don't you, if you're not a coward, go face them face to face and say, this is it. Come out in the broad daylight. Why always wait when people are sleeping and then you take advantage of that? So we hope that the government will do something. Yesterday Falana was saying the fact that it's not illegal for you to acquire arms as far as they are being licensed. You can actually acquire arms, because we have gotten to that point, Rachel, where people just have to protect themselves. And I just hope that the government will actually, just like you made mention of the fact that our humanity is dying gradually every day. So we don't want to get to that point where it to be normal. So after all, it's not my local government. After all, it's not my state. It affects everybody eventually. So we hope to see our government doing better on that. Still on the Voice of Liberty, we have NESI fraud Obazi report exposed Elumelu's lead UBA's fraudulent diversion of 3.9 billion naira. You can find more detail of that in the paper. And on alleged fraud, EFCC freezes 30 billion naira NSIPA fund traced to personal account. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has tracked 30 billion naira of the 44 billion naira moved from the account of the National Social Investment Program Agency. You can find more detail of that in the paper. 2023 AFCON winner to pocket 6.2 billion naira. You can find more detail, and we've seen Super Eagles are trying their best training. 9 days to that, so we just hope that they will do well while playing that in Cote d'Ivoire. Still on the Voice of Liberty, Rivers insecurity. Police launch manhunt for kidnappers of travelers. And we have ICJ to hear South African genocide case against Israel on Gaza, January 11. You can find detail of that in the paper. EFCC operative probe 52 companies over forex transaction with CBN, visits Dangote Group headquarters. You can find detail of that story in the paper. And that's all on the Voice of Liberty. But before we go further with other paper analysis, we would love to take a break at this moment to let you through the stories. Drop your comment on our Facebook and YouTube, and then when we come back, we'll continue with the paper analysis. Please stay tuned with us.
Democracy is the theory that common people know what they want and deserve to get it good and hard. Join me every Friday, 7 p.m. on National Talk for analysis as well as in-depth perspective on issues as they unfold in and around Nigeria, as well as an opportunity to add your voice.
Thank you for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories on the paper where we're seeing that from Plateau State, the killings, and in Zamfara as well, terrorists are demanding for levies from communities. Also, we're seeing Governor Mutwan is calling on the Supreme Court to help him save his mandate, as he feel that, whatever the appeal court is saying is not really with basic. And then we have other papers, stories here also where EFCC is talking about checking Dangote headquarters and also checking on some various firms that actually are having illegal forex transaction with the CBN. So we have a number of stories on the paper. We will love to hear what you have to say. You can drop it on our Facebook and YouTube, and then we'll read it. I am Stella Elisha, and I still have Rachel with me in the studio. Thank you,
You're
Rachel.
welcome.
All right, let's take a look at the next paper, which is Nigerian News Direct.
On Nigerian News Direct, how reporter breached our system to serve twice, coming from NYSC. Workers threaten to shut down seaports by January 9. You can find details on page 2. Equities gained 263 billion naira as NGX ASI crosses new milestone. The big story on the paper: ticket racketeering, extortion, free train ride as federal government extends free train ride till January 7. You can find details on page 2. I am looking forward to when nothing will be hijacked by corruption in this country. Something as simple as, the free train ride. We saw that during the December period where the federal government gave 50% off interstate travel by road and then free for train.
Yes.
So now we are seeing that ticket racketeering and then extortion sabotage the whole plan by the government. And this is to show us that, enough of pointing fingers to the leaders, enough of saying our senators are doing this, enough of saying governors are not doing that. Who is the person in the office? He's not a senator. He is a civil servant, a normal office holder, and yet you are corrupt. You are exploiting people, and you are bribing to give people ticket that is supposed to be free, and then you realize that an average Nigerian is corrupt, seller, with no offense. Even if the offense is being taken, that is what I have to say, because it doesn't make sense. Let's just enjoy certain things as they are without corruption finding its way into it. But then it just shows that our mindset, seller, goes a long way to where we are now as a country and where we will eventually get to. It's something as easy as this. We are seeing extortion and then bribery and corruption taking place. Is really sad, and I wasn't looking forward to seeing something
Richard,
like that.
I'm not surprised, honestly. I'm not surprised, because it's virtually in everything. It seems as if for every Nigerian DNA, corruption is there. Because everybody's looking for a way to actually save himself or actually to do something. Richard, it's normal. When you go to the market, you could just pick a detergent, for instance, and then on the detergent it's written 250. But the person selling it will tell you this is 300. But this is 250. How about my own gain? Yeah, there's no fault saying that you will make a gain, but sometimes the gain is outrageous, and you can't help but wonder what really is the problem. How about when you are retiring and then your papers need to be clear? Somebody somewhere in the office will tell you have to pay 100,000. You have to give me 10% of your retirement when it comes in for me to clear your L. It's either your file is missing or a number of things are going on. So Rachel, I think it's just like you made mention, enough of pointing the finger, because when you point one finger at someone, four are pointing back at you. What have you done? How about the market woman back there in the market? How about the measure you use to measure? Do you measure it well? When it's supposed to be 1 kg, do you make sure you level it? Rachel, you are going to buy tomatoes. You'll tell you that from the top to the bottom, it's very fresh tomatoes. But after turning it, you realize that, they are rotting. So these are things that is happening. So just like you made mention, enough of pointing, because before you get there, you started somewhere. So you were a corrupt director. That was why, as a senator, you cannot help it but be that. But be corrupt. So we hope that we'll look beyond this. When they say it's free, make it free. Why looking for a way to extort it? How about in school, Rachel? How many times do you pay XG? How many times do you pay departmental? So these are the things we're talking about. So we hope our government will look into that. And then individually as Nigerians, we should look inward and say, if you want to be a patriotic citizen of the country, be patriotic. Not because you have something to gain eventually. But put a smile on somebody's face. You never can tell what tomorrow holds eventually. So we hope to see that from everybody.
Still on Nigerian News Direct, River X factional speaker withdraws court suit, gets appointment as chief of staff. A tribe called Judah, Funke Akindele, breaks on record, rakes in 1 billion naira. You can find details on page 2. We have a picture story where we can see the CBN Governor Cardoso together with other stakeholders, and that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
All right, let's take a look at the next paper, which is the Metrics newspaper. Africa's growth to increase in 2024, says UN report. You can start reading that story on the front page and continue inside the paper. Third mainland bridge closure, federal government, Lagos issue travel advisory. You can find that on page 3. Why Nigeria economy may fare better in 2024 than 2023. This is coming from the CPPE. Reveals factor that affected economy in 2023, and we hope that they will look into that, because while we are having Rwanda saying the first half is going to be tough, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria is saying first half is going to be tough, and here we're seeing they said the economy may fare better in 2024. Well, we hope that those other factors that affected the economy last year have actually been looked into, so they do not affect this year as well. Still on the Metrics newspaper, increase in fuel prices, Ipman opens up. Link NNPC Limited, oil marketers say no plan to increase fuel price. Warn Nigerians against panic buying. We've seen that for a number of days now. You can find detail of that on page 2. Rising debt profile, Obasanjo raises alarm, says coming generation will shoulder the burden. I mean, it's not today we're knowing this. For a number of years now, we know that even children unborn are going to pay for this. So we hope that the government is doing something to make sure that this debt does not affect every Nigerian eventually. Peace at last, Edison T.HE withdraws suit against 25 Rivers Assembly members. PENCOM NGX collaborate to enhance PFA's equity participation through broad index. Also, we're seeing on Forex fraud, EFCC operatives storm Dangote head office in Lagos, detail found on page 3. Tinubu rings changes as MPA Namasa appoint new executive directors. Ondo PDP floor National Working Committee directives appoint acting chairman. We have a picture story giving back to his alma mater. We can see Femi Bajabiamila, Chief of Staff to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in the blue attire, commissioning the new 485 bell hall of residents he donated to the University of Lagos, and we're really happy when we see people giving back to the community. And you can look up more of the stories inside the paper, and that's all the Metrics newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, AFCC probes NSIPA beneficiaries in alleged forex allocations abuse. My election nullified without basis, Plateau Governor cries out to Supreme Court. Fubara's ally withdraws suit against 25 Rivers lawmakers. How dry season climate change exacerbate risks of virulent diseases. You can find details on page 4 and 5. Naira battles fresh threat, falls below 1,200 naira to a dollar at parallel market. A wake-up call to African leaders. You can find this editorial on page 2. Man predicts challenging business year, urges federal government to prioritize manufacturing. Group blames MOSOP for underdevelopment in Ogoni. Navy decries report on complicity in oil theft. More details can be found on page 29. Create economic management team, NES tells Tinubu. More details can be found on page 7, and that's all the news on the Guardian newspaper.
On Daily Independent newspaper, federal government directive of 50% automatic deduction from the IGR on settle coming from ASOP. You can find more in the paper. Union seek aviation agency removal from the TSA. Inauguration of board of directors. More detail of that story also can be found in the paper. Bloated directorate worsen aviation sector woes coming from expert. Say agency may not survive with top-heavy bureaucracy. We work behind the scene for peace in Rivers, Dire Hin Fubara. EFCC raid Dangote Lagos office over forex deal. Despite National Working Committee opposition, Ondo PDP rectifies its chairman's suspension. NIDCOM probes killing of Nigerian student by Canadian police. You can find more of that on page 7. Nigeria can attain with sufficiency, says Jigawa government. And we have public office ban Buhari's ex-minister Talen appeals judgment. Northern governors seek federal government and state collaboration to better the life of citizens. Comment Tinubu's step to end Kaduna and Plateau crisis. Ozodinma raises 44-man committee for his inauguration and swearing in. You can find detail in the paper. We have a picture where we can see the governor of Gombe State with the president. You can do well to grab the paper in more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Business Day newspaper, A Tribe Called Judah becomes first Nollywood film to gross 1 billion naira. Lessons for Nigeria as India boosts FDI 13-fold in 22 years. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 2. How student loan will make or mar education in 2024. 4 Supreme Court election judgment to watch in 2024. We have rice pasta sales drop to 5-year low on rising prices. AFCC probes 52 firms over FX transactions with CBN. Details can be found on page 27, and that's all the news on Business Day newspaper.
On Nature newspaper, we have Governor Bago unveils plan to establish varsity on climate change agri in Niger State. On Nature Fact, we have walking palm trees in Latin America. Detail found on page 13. Minister urges private sector to drive the CNG adoption. Delta initiate reforms on greenhouse farming, agro-industry park. West Africa faces cereal production decline, food price hike, coming from the Federal Agri Organization report. And we have Environment Commissioner deploys open defecation along Ibadan Expressway. You can find that on page 6. Planned takeoff of Eastern Railway corridor excite traders and passengers in Aba and Port Harcourt. And we have nature care, health and healing benefit of Datolon routes. Also, we have the big story on the paper where we have Aseral to transform Kano State landscape with 10 million trees. Downside, we have Qatar reveals Park 2024 sport calendar. You can find that on page 21. And also, that's all on Nature newspaper.
On Punch Sport Extra, Adesanya knockout king. And still on the countdown to AFCON, we have 8 days to go. CAF raises AFCON prize money to $7 million. Eagles under pressure to win AFCON. Mikel interested in Nigeria job. You can find more details on page 7. Kadri rules lost to world number 1. City's Haaland Doku returns. Salah close to new Reds contract. And we have Echegini joins Juventus on 2-year deal. This is still on the open transfer windows for January. We have Wan Bissaka extends United contract. Charles Okocha exclusive. I want to beat Portable. I really want to beat him because of all he has been saying, and I know I can. My boxing rivalry with Portable. You can find details inside the paper. Nadal cruises into Brisbane last 8. And we have Verstappen names Formula 1 Dream Team. You can find details inside the paper, and that's all the news on Punch Sports Extra.
Well, that's how far we can also go on the program. Thank you, Rachel,
You're
for
welcome,
joining us
Sarah.
with me. And thank you also to our viewers at home for always keeping a date with us on this program. Until we come your way next week, to have a blessed weekend ahead.